Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Deciphering My Experience. My name is Eric, and we're going to have an interesting conversation for everybody today. We have another experiencer who also has a history from Long Island. So I find that to be a wild connection in the mix. And she's going to share a whole bunch of her experiences. But before we get to that, I do want to remind everybody that this November 4th to 7th, in Las Vegas, Nevada, we will be at the Cosmic Consciousness in Disclosure event, which will be at the Golden Nugget Hotel, which is right there on the Strip. And if you have any questions about getting there or hotel accommodations, just check out at 5devents.com and get yourself down there. It should be a blast, should be a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of speakers down there. Penny Bradley, Tony Rodriguez, James Rink, myself, Anthony Zender, and also James Powell. So it should be a lot of fun, and I hope everybody can come out there. I'd love to meet everybody. But for today, we have a speaker that I'm really looking forward to introduce. So let's just get right to that. And welcome to the show. We have Jeanne, who is on the East Coast. So we connected up. We're just about 4 hours apart, if I remember correctly. And oddly enough, she had told me that it's extremely warm there today. So all kinds of oddities that we're starting with. But welcome to the show, Jeanne. How are you doing today?
I am doing fine right now.
That's good to
I
hear.
wanted to talk to you because I saw your podcast, or I don't know if you call it a podcast, with Dr. Stephen Greer. And well, two things really. That was one of them. The other thing is recently the whole idea of the Havana Syndrome. That's been come out in the open, even though I think it's sometimes what Dr. Greer calls a controlled release. I'm not sure if that's true, but where they're talking about technologies that are being used to target people, but they're making it kind of with a spin that it's, the diplomats and it's the Havana Syndrome, and they still haven't addressed all the other ways that technologies are being used to target people. So I'm grateful that the concept of the Havana Syndrome is out there. And also, I saw in your podcast, I heard in your podcast that you're aware of these technologies. And that got me very excited because I wanted to talk with someone who knows about this. There's a community, there are people who call themselves targeted individuals. And I really don't want to identify myself that way. I don't want, I want to be free of the technology attacks. And so I like the idea of talking to someone who has experience with the technologies, or at least awareness of them.
I can follow that 100%. When I first started seeing people speaking in the targeted individual community, I was more or less ignoring it because it seemed kooky to me.
Yeah.
Which there was a fistful of topics in my, I guess, my hobby of studying different topics. There was a fistful of topics that I just kind of avoided because they seemed kind of kooky. That was on the list. Another thing on that list was like the secret space program. But in my studies, there was like certain lines of study that I would get to where it would bring me in a direction of one of the kookier topics, and that's where I would stop because I was like, I must be going in the wrong direction, was the way my brain was working. But then I started to pay attention to more of my own experiences, and I had to start making connections that I did not want to make. And now I have myself associated to the term targeted individual, which I never thought that was going to happen. But you're right. It is an uncomfortable environment in a way, but I do work within the community because as you and I are learning, there is technology that exists that is that's showing at the very least some of the things these people are saying are based in fact.
Yes. there has been a lot of conjecture, and one of the reasons that I've avoided the community of targeted individuals who use the term gang stalking, MK Ultra, COINTELPRO, which stands for Counterintelligence Program, and other things. And the reason I have avoided that conversation or that narrative is because they often just say the US government is experimenting on people. Now, I'm not saying that isn't true. However, I think that it's like saying if the US government, if they have an iPhone, well, lots of people can have iPhones. It's not, the technology may be used in certain ways against people, but the technology itself has been hijacked. It's been, it's everywhere. So in my experience, I think I had 3 different kinds of attacks. But I want to start by saying I was attending the 2017 Alien Cosmic Expo. I wanted to see Dr. Greer, Dr. Stephen Greer, who does the CE5, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind protocols.
Where was this event at, Jeannie?
That was in Toronto.
Okay.
June 23rd to the 25th in 2017.
Ooh, close to summer solstice, right?
Yeah. And I went there, and I actually, at the time didn't realize the whole concept of what Dr. Greer calls stagecraft, where the technology can be used to put images into people's minds to create scenarios so people believe it's really happening. And so some things happened at the conference, and during one of his presentations, he did a training. It was called, it was an intro on remote viewing. And I actually saw it came into my head, mantid hybrid being walking toward me from the stage.
Wow.
And it was not like 100% 3D, but it was kind of in my mind's eye, but it came and stood right in front of me. And then there was another at that same conference with somebody else. I was attending another, they have all day, they have different people.
Could I ask a question right there? I'm just curious.
Sure.
When you're saying right in front of you, I'm trying to build a visual in my head here. So how far in front of you would you say this thing was standing? And how tall would you say it is? I see you like looking up, like as if you're imagining it taller than you. So I imagine you're looking up at it. So how tall and how far away?
It was right in front of me, so probably right here.
Okay.
But at that point, I wasn't physically seeing it as if there was an actual, like if a person stood in front of me.
Okay.
But it was at that point, maybe more in my mind's, I don't know. It's hard to explain.
Okay. Okay.
But it was an image. And I was like, oh, I wasn't scared. And I said, in my mind, these chairs I was sitting in, I was in so much pain in my lower back from sitting in these chairs. They were basically folding chairs. And I said, I heard that mantids were great healers. Could you do something about my back? That's what I said. But to be honest with you, I'm not saying it wasn't, but I'm pretty sure, considering what happened after that, I'm pretty sure it was what Dr. Greer calls stagecraft, where they actually put these images. I don't necessarily remember that you fixed my back, but
do you have a recollection of the images that were presented?
I mean, at that moment, or just that he was standing there.
Okay.
He had, I don't know if kind of like a, white color.
Okay.
Long arms, long legs, skinny, and the head was really long. and the eyes went up like this, like really big eyes, black eyes. And I don't remember anything other than that in
Okay.
the face.
I guess what I was getting at was like when you had said images, my brain went to like almost as if there was additional info downloaded or something like that. Was my
No,
inquiry. Okay.
no, but as the weeks progressed, I did have constant, I thought I was doing the CE5, but I was doing it on my own mostly, where I was doing CE5 protocol, which is basically reaching out in our minds. I wasn't really doing the protocol where you reach out and you vector in potential extraterrestrials, but I was just sort of reaching out to make peaceful contact. But I was having a lot of experiences, usually at night when I was in bed. And at first, like I'm saying, I didn't know what it was. I mean, I assumed it was real, but some of them were weird. For example, one time I was lying in bed, I opened my eyes, I had been asleep, and I saw this giant, with my eyes open, giant anime. I mean, probably 8 or 9 feet tall. He looked like a cartoon with his hat turned backwards. And he was this, anime. And he was, I thought I saw him on my left side of my bed, but then he was on my right side and he was holding his hand over me, but I felt like he was pretending to be reaching out for something else. Anyway, and there was another person, whatever, that was a cross-dressing man. I'm just telling you what I saw, okay? There was this tall man, and he had like I would say like kind of a brownish skin, like basically like a Middle Eastern person with a big-ish, hookish nose, and a wig. I mean, it was obviously a wig of white, like strawberry blonde, brown hair, shoulder length, very obviously a wig. And he had this giant tablet or something. And then I saw in my mind's eye the fingers going across the tablet, which looked like insect fingers. And I was just like, and that lasted about probably less than 10 seconds, that situation. And I was having these kinds of weird things. At one point, with my eyes closed, I saw a giant green eye, like an insect, not an insect, more like a reptile eye. And I was startled, but I wasn't scared. And then I heard in my mind, I said, I usually would ask, are you here for my greatest well-being? I always tried to, ask that. And I didn't necessarily get a response. So I asked again. And finally I said, what are you doing? And in my head, I perceived, but it wasn't like I heard a voice, restructuring your brain, something like that. And I kind of liked that guy, whoever that was. It's a weird thing. So I started to have these experiences, and some of them were horrifying, and some of them were like, oh, I like him. I think it was stagecraft, probably much of it was, but I somehow think that some of it wasn't, because I was experiencing things that seemed beyond the, seeing. But that went on for the entire summer. And then on September, usually they came Friday nights. I'm like, what's that about? Maybe someone leaves the technology unlocked on Fridays and they get into it. No, at that time, I didn't think that, because I didn't know anything about what Dr. Greer calls stagecraft.
It's actually really funny that you're saying the Friday thing and your suggestion, because I'm gonna play devil's advocate on this, because I have heard from others that the how do we put it? I'm using the government loosely because when I'm talking about like the government, it's like the they. I don't believe that it's singularly the U.S. government. I believe a lot of factions have access to a lot of technologies that are being used
Yes,
inappropriately.
absolutely.
So, but from what I have heard, is that there was definitively many people that had access to these nefarious technologies that were governmental, and their MO was to train Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, operate on Thursday, and debrief on Friday. That's what they did every week. So in many people's recollections, everything happened on Thursday, always.
Oh, okay.
So when you're saying that it always happened on Friday, A, that makes sense to me. And
Yes.
B, I also follow up with what you're saying because it makes me wonder, like, well, if everyone else did leave on Thursday, so to say,
Yeah.
maybe it turns out that stuff was unattended to on Fridays.
Yeah.
That also
Well,
makes sense.
yeah. Well, if it's what Dr. Greer calls an unacknowledged special access projects,
Mm-hmm.
those projects may have, and I later discovered, I'm not going to go into it right now, but I later discovered that you talked about factions. There were 3 factions that were interfacing with me. I think one of them was the so-called government faction trying to go against the whole concept of ETs,
Okay.
trying to create, because I later learned that all over the globe at the same exact time at similar conferences, people who went to similar conferences got targeted. So so then it makes me believe that, okay, they're trying to do something. Maybe they're trying to disrupt the narrative or the ET concept, and I don't know. But in any case, so there was, I think, a faction that had very advanced technology because they were doing things like you wouldn't believe, but not that summer. It didn't happen until the end of the year in December. And I'll tell you between September and December what happened. September 6th, 2017, I woke up, and before I went to bed, I felt tingling going up my legs from my feet. And I thought, well, that's weird, but it didn't hurt. I went to bed and I woke up paralyzed. I was lying in bed and I couldn't move. And I saw, in my mind's eye, I saw an insectoid being, face with giant eyes, but kind of like a bluish, blackish, iridescent, just like an ant, I guess. And in the background, I saw technologies like as if it was a submarine or something, like all on the wall, but with no windows. And then the being was looking as if I was in a screen, like I was behind the screen, and he was looking directly at me. And he had this big collar. It was kind of like a dog collar, only it was the same color as his skin, that went around, to stop them from biting themselves. I'm just telling you what I saw.
Mm-hmm.
I have no response to that.
Mm-hmm. Just a casual observer.
Yeah, just like that. So there I am. I'm paralyzed, and I couldn't hardly, like I wasn't 100% paralyzed, and he had rose up, or the energy had rose up to about my solar plexus, and I took every bit of my strength to call out in a very weak voice, Source, Jeannie, or higher self. I called my higher self, and I felt a whoosh of loving presence come right down through the top of my head, right here. And I felt the sort of, stopping the thing. Mm-hmm. And I said, no, to this thing, no. And then I felt it start to retreat. And in my head, I heard the words, walk in. I didn't really know what a walk-in was, but I guess there's a whole narrative about walk-ins. I I heard of a person at the conference who said they were walking, but I really didn't know what it was. And then, uncharacteristically, not against my will, but it wasn't something I intended to do, I thanked him as he was retreating. I said, thank you. I just don't think it would work out. I said, you're an emotionless being, and I have a lot of emotion. I don't think it's a good idea. So that was very uncharacteristic of me to be so, anyway, it retreated and I didn't see that thing again. But I'm not going to go into the detail about what happened after that, because I did I looked up walk-in. I went to a Facebook group and I got connected with people. I ended up connecting with a man from New Zealand. I had lived in New Zealand for 2 years, 2013 to 2015, but I didn't know this man. I met this man and he had this whole narrative of being Archangel Gabriel. He was obviously being targeted, but at that time I didn't know. But he thought he was Archangel Gabriel, and he was getting ready to walk out of this life, and he was going to gather all these souls and create this new universe, and he wanted me to join him. And to be honest with you, I was it's kind of weird. And this whole experience for these months after the being so-called targeted, I was kind of pretending a lot. I can't explain it. And I don't know if other people have experienced this when they've been experiencing mind control technologies. But I was like, no, I wasn't really interested in this man. I paid for his flight to come from New Zealand to where I was in Vermont. I didn't want to be with him in the new universe, but I did these things. And he stayed with me for a month. And on the last day, and I realized he was not a good, it wasn't a good match. And I was having some other experiences while he was there, but I touched his shoulder. Oh, he told me the wings were growing out of his, Gabriel ring, and he was having a lot of pain. He was lying there. He was in such severe pain. He was, I think, being targeted for many years. He said he was getting downloads, and he would move his fingers all the time. And he was like, I think he was being tortured. At the time, I didn't understand it, but I knew something wasn't right. And he said he was working with God. And I said, no, I knew that wasn't right, because he wasn't a very empowered person. And I didn't think he could be Archangel Gabriel.
This is how devastating technologies like V2K can potentially be. I mean, this is right on the list of a previously sane person, a completely normal person who is unaware that this technology exists. I mean, I sound like a crazy person discussing it, but if people really, I mean, we used to have the term brooding was an activity. People would sit and brood, which means to just deeply think. I ask people to brood on the idea that I'm discussing with V2K. Consider it real. Brood on the idea. What do we do knowing that there is a technology that tolerates for somebody to speak words into your head in your own voice? That is a dastardly tool. And I've spoken with a gentleman by the name of Tony Rodriguez, and he and I have stated and agreed that it's, in antiquity, there were techniques to do these things. You could call someone a magician, whatever you want to call it. But there was a technique, called throwing your voice. There was a way. There was a way. If you had the skills and technique, you could speak in someone else's voice to them, and they would think it was coming from themselves. Now we have a technology that can copy that.
Yes.
And what we've been witnessing for the last few decades is what I would say, it's just tuning it in. It's just practice. Just like when a gun manufacturer makes a rifle, they have to go to the range and they have to try to shoot on target. They have to get precision. So a new rifle was built, so to say. And for the last few decades, the targeted individuals, the folks that were getting gang stalked, folks like your person who's, you know, has the impression of wings coming out of his back. These are all things that could be manufactured.
Yes.
And I believe that our ancients were aware of the dangers of this. And these are where we had mystery schools challenging folks to know thyself, and how important that was to know thyself, to find the imposter voice in your own mind. I think is what people are going to learn in the not too distant future is one of the most challenging and important things they will ever attempt to do in their life.
Yes. It took me a little while to figure out what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, in that same scenario I was just talking about, I decided, you have to go. I told this man, you know, this isn't working out. And I had to purchase another ticket for him to go back. And it was December 5, 2017, which is the same exact date that Mark Polymerpolis was hit. The Havana Syndrome hit him with severe vertigo. He saying he was nauseous. The world was spinning. December 5, same exact date. In the middle of the night, I was hit with severe vertigo, vomiting, 3:15 a.m. And that's Vermont time. He was in Moscow. You know, with severe headaches and everything. And then I heard, we want you to know how powerful we are, in my head. It wasn't my own voice.
Okay. Yeah, it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. Then at 7, I couldn't hardly lie down, and et cetera. And this man was leaving that morning. He was getting a flight. At 7:20 a.m., I got hit again. Extreme spinning and vomiting. And I did hear another voice that came to me, supposedly Divine Mother, who is the name of I don't know that it's a specific being, but Paramahansa Yogananda always talked about Divine Mother as a celestial being. He was very much connected to her. And I followed those teachings for a while. So I would often, that was like, if I was praying or something or meditating, I would say Divine Mother. Anyway, this person was talking to me, pretending to be Divine Mother. I knew it wasn't Divine Mother. They were saying to stay away from this man, that he's deluded, because I remember that exact word, deluded, and that he's working with some very dangerous individuals that are, very hurtful, violent, whatever. I don't remember the exact word. Anyway, I heard that as well. And I was like, oh, but a lot of what happened to me, and I'm not going to, obviously I don't have time to tell you, because basically I've been tortured since that time every single day, 24 hours a day. There were times I didn't sleep at all. And there were so many versions of these so-called mind-crafted experiences, but I think there were 3 factions. One was, I do think it was an unacknowledged project. I do think, because there was this really advanced technology, and those guys became my allies. They were the good guys, because they didn't really hurt me in the way that the other faction came, which was basically trying to hurt me or hurting me, both. So
it makes me wonder, just in the grand scheme of hearing people's histories and, my experiences with the world and government organizations and facilities. Let's just say like this, if you could package up the technology into some crates, right? So to imagine there's this crazy technology and there's a department that's using it, but all of a sudden they lose their funding. It doesn't mean the technology disappears. It means it goes back into the crates, and now it gets put in a warehouse somewhere, And we all think, well, it's good that they defunded that. Well, yeah, until the warehouse hands figure out what's in the boxes. And then
Or pirates.
and then next thing you know, it's black marketed out, or they're, that it's
Mm-hmm.
this stuff. Once it's born on this planet, it's not going
Yeah.
away. It's just a matter of
Yeah.
whose hands are manipulating it. So even what you're hearing it almost sounds to me like it's just, I'm hearing that the technology is moving from hand to hand or being sold out and expanded, and this is why we're just
Mm-hmm.
getting people that are having, the same experiences like you mentioned on December 5th, and then
Mm-hmm.
also different experiences because they're changing the programs. I wonder if we all as human beings had been paying attention on December 5th, if we were all taking notes on how we felt, what percentage of the population in total would have had the exact same symptoms, but because their life experience doesn't give them the wherewithal to pay attention to it at all, just wrote it off as something else?
Mm-hmm.
When it could have just been a faction, could have been opening up a crate for the first time on December 5th
Yeah.
and went, what does
Yeah.
this do? And then they would, and all of a sudden a whole portion of the population goes, I don't feel good.
Yeah. I don't know.
It makes me
But
wonder.
I want to tell you one other thing that I like I said, there's so much for me to tell you.
Go
And
for it.
there's so many scenarios, charades and things that I saw. And, they would have, ninjas and demons and, all different ETs, all
Mhm.
different kinds of things. And
And this was daily, you were saying then?
24 hours a day.
Okay.
At one point I had assassins. Now, this is what I mean. I didn't really believe it, but I was pretending. I can't explain it. I was going along with it in some ways, even though I didn't believe it. One example is supposedly there were assassins that were in my body,
Mhm.
as if my soul was in there and they were going to steal my soul.
Mhm.
And I said, you can't steal my soul, but yet, why would I be talking to them?
Right. Yes, I totally get you. Why am I
You
even
can't
having this conversation with myself?
And these so-called assassins would come every single night, and they would go inside my body as if they were in a warehouse looking for my soul. And they would have all kinds of equipment, and I created with my imagination this giant spider to scare them away. I mean, it was just unbelievable.
I'm trying to put to words oftentimes, because I think, your experience, my experience, other people's experiences, we're all trying to get a common vernacular so that we can be on the same page. And what I want to try to do here is so what you're explaining right now, I imagine that there's other people out there that are trying to be like, oh, I wonder if that's exactly what's going on with me or not. So would it be
Can I
fair?
say one more?
Yes,
can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm saying this is because there's a manipulative quality to it that I think happens that speaks to certain people. So if you're a new age person, it might be like this. My friend of mine said the Kundalini had her way with him. I'm like, what the, And then another person said, they hear the voice of God. Another person say, whatever. Okay.
Okay. Yes. So those are the
I
details.
do want to say,
yep.
Yeah.
For different people. Yep. But
one
now
more
from
thing.
go ahead.
Well, because on January 24th, 2018, which is not that far from December 5th, I was in my room and Dr. Stephen Greer came through my window. And I heard his voice, and at first I was like, oh, and he was in his interdimensional form. So I couldn't see him. He was sitting in the chair, supposedly. I didn't see anybody sitting there, but it was his voice that I heard in my head. And then there were these other Dr. Greers, and they said, oh, those are clones. I mean, so the point is, they knew that I was following Dr. Greer, and they were trying to figure out how to manipulate me, and they used his voice. I actually sent him a letter and told him that. And it was right after that I noticed that he started teaching about stagecraft at his talks, because he said right at the talk, he said, I haven't wanted to delve into this, but I realize now that I have to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that was the one thing I wanted to tell you.
No worries. What I'm trying to, I guess, ascertain from your perspective in a way is like, if we were to separate your knowledge of all these CE5 things and all that stuff, and we were to just try to say, like, in your firsthand experience, the going through the throes of, like, when you say that, you know, the ninja imagery and this stuff, would it be safe to say, or use the words, that you were in the throes of dealing with intrusive thoughts? Does that work for you to explain it that way? So that maybe other people who are dealing with these intrusive thoughts by the details that matter in their life can at least see some connection. Like, is that fair to say that? Like, you were dealing with intrusive thoughts all the while?
Yes. Well, what I would like to say, that's another area.
Okay.
There are so many different layers and levels to this. In some
Okay.
cases, it's an actual image.
Okay.
That wasn't a thought. I didn't
Okay.
have that thought. I never thought about, you know, ninjas coming into my room and to attack me. I never thought about this one chancellor demon ninja who came in and was, and demons coming through. I did not think about those things.
Totally get it.
So those are some aspects. There's another layer where my own thoughts, and I've heard people talk about this when they start getting obsessive thoughts, or this one man I know, he said, you know, the same song will play over and over in his head. That kind of thing happens. And I think they do that. So they will repeat my thoughts. So if I had a thought, or they will manipulate my thought, and I know it's not me, where they try to get me to think in certain ways, and or to believe certain things, or to, I don't repeat things in my head, because I'm just not like that. I'm not a very verbal person. Some people are, I mean, sometimes I do talk to myself when I'm, okay, I got to do this, I got to do that. But when that's happening in my head, I know that's not me. So that does happen.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's a lot of potential for evil with these technologies, right? So right now there's a conversation that a lot of people aren't aware that a lot of the information on the internet is it's manufactured by another program. You know, it'll see a little news story over here, another thing over here, and it can automatically, using the devices of the machinations of industry of the internet, the computer can make a news story and present it to the computer. And then we're now reading news stories that are manufactured by the digital realm. So how long before that technology grabs a transmitter?
Yes.
And says, I'm going to now just pump out the news directly.
Yeah.
I'm not going to wait for the humans to click on Google anymore.
Yeah.
You know, we already know you can manipulate the minds just by the power of the edit and the presentation of information. How far are we going to go with how this medium works and interfaces with our minds? And I think what you and I and some other folks are learning is that the technology is a lot further ahead on the curve than people are being told.
Yes. And also there's a difference between mind control and brain control, I've discovered. They're going into my brain and they're doing things, they're stimulating things in my brain. I'm not a neuroscientist, I don't really understand, but I've got an endocrine system, I've got biochemistry, I've got neural connections, and they attack me in my body over and over again. So even this little thing here, I have an itch here, little things like that, they will do things, and they sexually assault me every single day. And it's like zaps, stings, penetrations. Are they really penetrating me? No. I looked into it, and I've heard other people call it phantom touch.
Okay. So you're feeling things in your genitalia area, you're not stating that it's just a mental thing. It's not like you're
Yeah.
mentally thinking something's going on. You're saying, no, 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 I'm feeling physical stimulation.
Yes.
10-4.
And many people who call themselves targeted individuals also feel it.
Okay.
So I don't know how it works.
Mm-hmm.
It's the technology that, like I said, once it gets into your brain, body, biofield,
Mm-hmm.
because I think some of it just comes through the biofield.
Mm-hmm.
In 1994, in the Iraq War, they had the voice of God technology
Mm-hmm.
that went down to 1,200 soldiers, Iraqi soldiers, and they heard the voice of Allah, or I don't know if it was the voice of Allah, but they heard Allah tell them to lay down their weapons,
Mm-hmm.
and 1,200 of them laid down their weapons.
Yep.
That was Allied technology, whether it was U.S. or others, I don't know.
There was
Well,
there was a consideration during the Cuban Missile Crisis. One of the options that they fielded was to have a submarine surface off the coast of Cuba and utilizing, which was available at the time in the 60s, hologram technology along with V2K, and they were going to give a visual and audio representation of the return of Christ to get them to stop what they were doing. They
really?
did not eventually put that to action, but it does go
Yeah.
to show us how long these technologies were
Yeah.
available.
And in the late 90s, if you look up, there were different things like Heaven's Gate,
Yes.
various different cults.
There is a chapter on Route 109 in Farmingdale, Long Island.
Okay. And in Africa too, there was this man who heard through his television and his radio, whatever, he heard, I think it was the Virgin Mother, Mary, from the Christian faith. He heard her telling him what to do, and he ended up killing hundreds of people. And it was all around the same time. Also, Charles Manson. It was all in the late 90s. So I kind of wonder if someone got their hands on some technology and they were using it in that way. But like you said, this technology has been, it exists, and psychopaths, sociopaths, terrorists, military, whoever's using it, they can use their own ethical standards, whatever they are.
Or lack thereof.
Right. But I wanted to say something else that you said in Dr. Greer's thing, and he didn't quite go along the same path that I was. You said you had this pen, and if someone was in an accident and you healed them with the pen, that would take the job away from that doctor who would normally do the healing. That has been what I've been saying for the past few years. People need jobs.
Oh, that's what's holding everything up. Yep.
Yeah. What are you going to do if your job is to go in and rape that person with technology? Well, what if you stop doing that with them? What are you going to do? Mm-hmm. As hideous as it sounds.
Oh, you're totally right.
People need jobs.
And it's not even that people need jobs per se. Going from the higher up echelons of the ruling oligarchy, the people need to be made to be kept busy. We can't release them from their labors with new technology, or in their lack of becoming busy with paying their mortgage, they're going to start questioning what we're up to. That's all that's going on right now, is there's a leeching aspect of society that's controlling and leeching, and they need to keep everybody else busy. Billionaires don't work. They don't earn their money.
No.
That's not how it works. You can't earn $1 billion. There's nothing someone does that's worthy of that. I'm a plumber. I can go to your house, I can change your toilet, and I can put a dollar amount to it. And you'll say, Eric, that's a fair amount of money for you to put my toilet in. There's no reason that I could come to your house and justify $1 billion transaction for anything. There's nothing anybody can do that justifies that.
Mm-hmm.
It's an unreal circumstance that we imagine, we apply value to as if it's justifiable. Billionaires don't do anything other than oppress other people. That's why they have billions of dollars. Because
Well,
if we paid people in apples instead of dollars, no human beings would be tolerating the presence of billionaires sitting on their hordes of apples while other people starve. It just wouldn't work.
yeah. Well, so the thing that, the concept of the military industrial petroleum complex is, a big part of that. So if you have an endless war and you have military personnel and you have defense contractors, they need to keep, in this paradigm, they need to keep their jobs. And even though you have these technologies that are hurting people, my idea is that some military personnel have been deployed in the pandemic to do different things to help people instead of just going out and killing people, and or going out and learning different ways to attack people through directed energy weapons. So I think it is possible to transition people into another way of being, but it has to be admitted that people are suffering from these attacks. And so and if you have unacknowledged projects and no one's admitting it, and then you have pirates, who's in charge of the pirates?
Mm-hmm.
Who's in charge of the psychopaths who are human traffickers?
I believe you're 100% right. And I would even add to the mix that there's probably even many factions that have the technology and are attempting to use it for what they think is good and the benefit of everyone. I think everyone's probably thinking that, but just by different definitions. That some people are probably going, look, these people are secretly using it for mind control. We're going to secretly use it to free them from mind control. That we have all of these things going on.
Do you know anyone who's secretly freeing people from mind control? I'd like to talk to those people.
Me. Well, I'm not secretly doing it. I'm publicly doing it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm publicly letting everybody know that the technology exists and they need to know thyself a lot better, because I'm letting everybody know you're already all targeted individuals. That's what I learned in the process of finding the term to be kooky, but doing the due diligence and research. The technologies do exist, and guess what, world? You're all suffering from it right now.
Are you suffering from being actually targeted from directed energy weapons that are going into your brain, body, and biofield, zapping you, burning you, stinging you, sexually assaulting you, putting images into your mind, doing stupid chatter in your mind? Are you suffering from that?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Who isn't? I think if you talk to anybody now long enough, just like we were saying earlier, like I was suggesting that if we had all journaled, we would all find something weird happened on December 5th. So that's why I'm trying to get people to talk more, because I believe the devil is in the details of the conversations we're not sharing.
Yeah.
So I do believe, yes, I pay enough attention to know that the list of Havana Syndrome items hits me square on the head.
Okay.
I think contemporarily it hits everyone square on the head, but most people aren't paying attention. They don't know thyself, and they certainly cannot take any of the problems in their life and follow them back to source. They're not in that activity to begin with. They're not paying that much attention. It's the beauty of these machines and the plausible deniability is that right off the bat, if anyone is paying attention, we get to call them a kook.
That's what they do.
Right.
I've sent so many letters to the CIA. I said, this technology is real. I need help to block it or to shield myself. And they told me to get a psychiatric evaluation.
Yep. And then they turn to some other department and they send a letterhead down to Department XKQ, and they go, oh, by the way, you're targeting that target really well, by the way. I mean, that's what's going on is that, you are cannon fodder for a system that's trying to figure out how to be more accurate. Back when I was a kid on Long Island and there was all weird stuff going on, one of the things that was discussed about the technique of the training of agents and programs was they would simply pump out a signal with a phone number. Anyone who's receptive, which they don't know yet, they're just transmitting and trying to dial in. They would crank out a phone number, and it would be in whomever's heads. They don't know. It'll just keep, like you said, a song going over, a song, a song, a song, a song. Well, someone decided, let's pump out a phone number, and we'll keep doing that till people start calling. And that's how they started to dial in. You know, so if you're a teenager on Long Island and you're like, man, I don't know why, but 516-422-33333 needs to get called. And you call that thing up, and next thing you know, they're like, hey, how you doing? Oh, you called.
Never thought about it that way.
It's that simple. And that's how they started this system of engaging the minds through these technologies. It's extremely easy to catch people on a frequency.
Well, especially since these technologies were back engineered from the ET craft, and there was an interface between the craft and the operators of the craft, so that their consciousness, what Dr. Greer calls technology assisted consciousness and consciousness assisted technology. So it's already been developed to connect with the consciousness. This particular it's communication technology when you think about it.
Yeah, it's just
so whether you're communicating with my brain to tell my brain to zap me in my genitals, it's still communication.
It's still outside intent being applied to you, is the way my mind looks at it. Is that people need to pay attention to outside intent that they can't distinguish from their own thoughts.
Right.
And that's where it gets very problematic.
And they make it really difficult sometimes, because sometimes I'll be sitting there, I'm really busy, and then I stop because I realize that isn't me.
Right.
So they sometimes say, oh yeah, she goes along on this track over here, let's go here. I mean, I don't know what they're thinking, if they're even thinking, or if they're just, robots or psychopaths and they get off on it. But
I mean, it would be really easy. It would be really easy if you were a complete vegan, right? You're a total vegan, and all of a sudden in your head, in your voice, you're hearing like, "Oh man, I could go for a bacon cheeseburger." That would be really easy to say. That's not me, and you could say something's going on. This is weird. Why do I have that intrusive thought?
Yes.
Excuse me. And now, granted, the system could do that, but I think what people need to pay attention to is that, as we can see in the mass media and politics and the way of the world, is that everything's in baby steps. They take over in baby steps. So I believe these technologies don't need to be as so bold as trying to get vegans to eat bacon cheeseburgers, but what people need to pay attention to is that if there's an AI involved, right? It's not like there's a technician, a man sitting at the terminal going, I'm going to make Jeannie say such and such right now. It's not like that. It's about manipulation. So if there's an AI that just becomes familiar with someone like you, and through your integration with the network, you jump on the internet for this, you have a cell phone that does that. It's literally tracking. All of these things are tracking everything you do and giving metadata to something. That something can process that information, make an assessment of who you are and what you're up to. And then it can then add you into the mix of the whole of society, and then decide if it likes what society's up to or not. And it can start changing things on an individual level, simply by giving you different commercials in your gear to begin with. If the system wants to sell more milk by the end of the year, it's going to start creating more dairy commercials. And maybe you'll start thinking in your head that you want more dairy products. And maybe people would think that that type of stuff is just happening naturally. Or maybe it turns out that our brains have already been completely commercialized for the market. And it turns out when you were hungry and you had a hankering for something, what if it had nothing to do with your thought? Who's going to figure that out? Hold on, I need to go get some milk. I just realized now. But I mean, that's actually the real goal. It's not, you know, they're not trying to mind control people to turn everybody into assassins. They're trying to mind control people to control the simple details of life. That's market value. That's a return on investment.
Mm-hmm.
When one industry can say, you know what? You know, we used to invest in commercials to get to that goal at the end of the year, the milk, right? You know, the milk industry wants to say, by the end of this year, we want to have sold 5 billion gallons of milk. So previously, they would have to go to the media industry. We're going to have to produce commercials. And how do we get people to buy our milk? Cool. Well, that's a dead technology because we got better stuff now. There's new corporations that exist. Oh, you want to sell milk? Oh, we can make people buy your milk.
Well, yes, I think that's true with the devices and everything, and they can track you.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm wondering about is if you're considering remote neural monitoring, which monitoring is obviously a euphemism,
Mm-hmm.
but the remote neural technologies that interface with people's biometric signature. And I'm not saying like when you see on the TV shows when the guy looks into the scanner and it has his eye scan and it lets him go through the door, you know, that's a biometric signature. And I'm not saying, you know I've taken tests and I've done different things, and I don't know if my biometric signature is in the database somewhere, but where it's specifically targeting an individual to get into their brain in a different way than the mind. Because one thing can be the mind and the other can be the brain, to get your endocrine system to do something, to get sensations to go through your body, to electrocute you, because I've actually been electrocuted every day, where electrical pulses will go through my body, especially to my arms, and it causes, I can even see my skin will shrivel up on my hands sometimes, and I feel it. It's just this really excruciating feeling. And I don't think that's just the consciousness thing. I think there's a difference between brain control and mind control.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't necessarily believe that every person is experiencing brain control,
right.
But I do agree with you about people's phones are basically like tracking devices.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I don't have a smartphone. I've got a flip phone. I keep it turned off. It's only for emergencies. I'm on a laptop right now. I have an iPad. I have a MacBook, but I try to not have these signals around me, but obviously it's too late for that. So I'm just wanting some kind of message to go out to people who are somehow able to intervene to stop these signals, these targeted signals. And that's why the concept of the targeted individual, even though I don't like it, is actually valid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of those things. I didn't like it either when I first came across it. I thought it was kooky woo-woo stuff, but now it's just, I feel for the folks that are involved with it.
Do you know David Voigts? He's a naval officer.
It rings a bell.
He's a retired naval officer. He knew of a program in the Navy where people were being targeted, and he got himself inducted into it because his idea was that he's going to stop it from the inside. So he did get inducted in on purpose, and then he became a targeted individual, and he still is. So he travels the country, I don't know if he is now with the pandemic, and educates people about this.
I'll have to check him out. The name
you should check him out, because the thing that I really like about him is he's an insider in that he knows what's going on. But having said that, I still don't like the idea that some people are assuming that the US government and the military is attacking everyone. I think that may be true in some cases, and it's just like people can have iPhones all over the world. There are others who have the same technology.
Well, again, it's like to say the U.S. government is it's not a unilateral thing. There's so many factions that operate under that umbrella that have no idea what each other are doing.
Right.
I think that in that multitude of factions and everything else going on, there are a couple of groups that have a piece of equipment that is turned on that is meant to impact everyone. That's all. So that device exists, as well as other stuff that's more pointed.
Yes.
We have everything going on. It's literally everything going on. There's probably 6 different devices on with different factions, and each one of them saying, this is being pumped out to everyone right now. Now, there's also people with another device that's saying, no, this one is only doing this, and it's only doing it to that person. Or this one's doing it to these 12 people. There's so much of this going on that it's almost impossible. You know, it would be like trying to right now saying, hey, did you hear about telephones? You know what people are talking about on telephones? Yeah, they're doing everything in the world on telephones. There's no limit.
And trees communicate with radio through radio waves. They communicate, and so radio waves are everywhere. And they communicate. Yeah.
Nikola Tesla was trying to let everybody know that just because we function all of our stuff on a Hertzian wavelength, that's not the end of it all. There's a lot more available.
Well, Eric, you didn't give me the answer I wanted, and that was that you were supposed to say, yes, you understand this technology, and this is the way we're going to fix it.
Oh, well, I'm on that path. I just don't have the answer yet.
Okay.
You know, that's why I do the deciphering of my experience and trying to bring other people into the fold, because I respect that I certainly don't have all of the answers. But I appreciate that, myself, I took a role as a plumber at the South Pole Station. In that task, I came across some very important information, and I just believe that everyone else is walking the same path as me. They just need to pay a little bit more attention around them, gather up the information that you didn't think was important before, figure out your life experience, and share it with everyone. That's all I want everybody to do. I learned that my path was more important than I thought. I just think other people can do the same thing. Everybody works somewhere. All of this nefarious stuff is happening under false pretenses somewhere. Someone's working for these outfits. Someone has more documents in front of them.
Yeah. So just put it out there.
Just keep doing it. You know, all I ever try to do is lead by example. I try to make my actions align with my intentions.
And you are a plumber after all. Did you ever see the movie Moonstruck with Cher?
Oh my God, I remember it being a really old movie. I didn't even realize about a plumber. I'll have to go watch.
Her father was a plumber, and they live in this big, beautiful house. And he goes, "You live here?" And she says, "Yeah." And he goes, "It's a mansion." She goes, "It's a house." And there's another people come, and they're like, "Look at this house." And he goes, "He's a plumber." And they go, "Oh."
Yep.
So if worst comes to worst, you're a plumber.
Yeah, there you go. It seems to be a peculiar term nowadays. Everybody seems to think it's like a CIA term or something like that as well, but I'm not familiar with it that way. Yeah, I think ever since.
Oh, like a code.
Yeah.
It's a code name. The plumber.
Yeah, exactly. The plumber is here or something. So I don't know. I guess I started out fixing leaks, and now I am the leak. So that's the way I look at it. But Jeannie, we are clipping right past that hour mark here.
Okay.
And I want to really thank you for all of the information that you shared today. That was an interesting talk, to say the least. And I am well aware of the fact that you have more to discuss. So I do really look forward to picking up this conversation in the future. Is there anything that you have that you're trying to connect with folks? Is there a way for people to get in touch with you? Anything that you are promoting? Website, email address, a YouTube channel, anything?
No, I haven't. I've tried, if anything, I've tried not to do any of that.
Hmm.
The reason I contacted you is because I thought you had information.
No, no worries. I
And you're going to
appreciate it.
fix it.
You're totally fine with this situation. It's actually why I built the platform, is to give people like you a voice, because I also, I never wanted to do this. This wasn't my intention. I liked slinging tools and fixing things. But because the world is changing and freedom of speech is dwindling, I'm just trying to provide a platform for folks that have their bit of information to put into the mix. And I do believe that is how we will fix this, Jeannie. I firmly believe in we the people. I believe in the sanctity of humanity, almost, to say that we are one family, we are one unit. Sometimes in that family, some siblings make things rough for each other. And I think that's where we're at right now, is that we need to figure out, who's causing trouble in the mix, but we the people will get it. We'll get it all figured out. And it's through communicating the truth, getting beyond the veil of disinformation and misinformation that's been applied so liberally as of late, that the truth will set us free. I believe in that, and that once everybody learns to actually know thyself, the confusion will disappear. It'll almost self-regulate. It'll be like, I think of it just like a calming of the waters. It could just happen in a blink. You can be looking at ripples in the water, and you don't necessarily know where they all came from, but you can just as easily watch them settle. And I have a feeling that for some reason we're just going to watch all the ripples settle out of nowhere once everybody becomes informed.
Yeah. I don't know. Something's got to happen.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Jeannie, and thank you for everybody out there that's been following Deciphering My Experience and Deciphering.tv. As always, please click the buttons, share, like, subscribe, help get this information out to the world. That's what really does matter, sharing the truth. And if anybody is empowered to help me out in that mission, if you can, go to the website, click on the PayPal, do the Patreon, or just get the information out there, really helps. And I also heard the other day from someone else on another show. I thought it was very interesting. You know what? I have a merch store on the website as well. If you want to buy a t-shirt or a mug, feel free. Think of that as a donation that gets you something in return for free. So if you want to donate $20 to get to the cause, and it turns out you get a t-shirt, look at it that way. Maybe that'll help. But everybody out there, please do the best to help each other out in what is going on. Be supportive in the world of those around you, not just your own world. Don't fight for your world. Fight for other people's worlds. That's true freedom. That's true patriotism, is supporting the differences of the people around you. Fight for others. Don't fight for yourself. That's where I'm at. So I look forward to talking to you again, Jeannie, and have an excellent day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.